This whole video is about the last steps of the immigration unit. Now, what we're going to talk about, it's kind of broken up into a couple different categories. First, I'm going to get some terms out of the way. You need to know what green cards are versus visas. You also need to know what country caps. So I'm going to get those terms out of the way. So that's the first section. Get some terms out of the way. Second section is all going to be about the 4 ways that you can come over to the United States. Okay? And then the next section after that is how can you become a citizen? Tell me the steps. And the last section deals with Reagan all the way up to Trump. So we're going to talk about terms like amnesty, DREAM Act, and DACA. So we're going to talk about those for the last section. So let's get at it. Get out of the way as far as people being here before I get into like the 4 ways to actually get into America is visa and green cards. Okay, so the green card versus the visa. The visa is only a temporary pass. If you're here on a visa, you're only going to be here for a select amount of time. And you can be on a visa for a variety of different ways, which we'll go to later. Work visa, school visa. We're going to go through literally codes of visas that you can get. Temporary. Green card is a permanent pass. It does not allow you to enter the U.S., but it lets you stay here as long as you want. It doesn't make you a citizen. It makes you basically a permanent guest. If you want to be. So green card is like a upgraded Visa card, okay? Visa card, you get this much time to go to school, to work for your employer. You have to constantly get it renewed. But the green card, you're here for pretty much as long as you want to be here for. Enjoy. So those are 2 terms you need to know just to understand the rest of this immigration talk we're about to have. What are the legal ways to actually gain access to our country, to actually be here? Not as a citizen, we're going to get to that, but like to be here, to like just be here legally. Okay, there are 4 pathways. Get ready to write them down. We got family, work, or I should just say visa, because it could be school too. So family, work. I'm going to categorize this as bad luck, as in you're going to be a refugee seeking asylum. And 4 is good luck. This is the lottery system, which we're going to talk about. But before we get into any of that, we need to talk about this idea of country caps, because country caps will factor in on a lot of these different categories in a lot of different ways. So country caps, what that means is there's only 7%. Every country, no matter what the population is, 7%, that's it, 7%. They can only account for 7% of all immigration into the country in a given year. That's it. So countries that have 1.4 billion populations like China, well, they had the same 7% as like Guam, which is in the 100,000s. So just keep that in mind. Billion, hundreds of thousands. We'll keep that in mind. So 4 ways to get in the country. You have family, work, refugee or seeking asylum, and then finally a lottery. And the lottery is totally misconceived. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's get at it with family. Coming over here to stay in the United States on a green card or visa, but this case would be a green card, would be a family migration. You'd be coming here in the family category. A lot of people are like, oh, does that mean like your cousin and your nephew and your uncle? No, it doesn't mean that at all. There's only basically your direct family, so it has to be your child, your spouse, or your parents, your direct parents. So it's not your uncle, it's not going to be your grandpappy, it's not going to be a third cousin far removed or your brother's roommate's dog. It's got to be your spouse, it's got to be your kids, it's got to be your parents. That's it. So how do they come over and what's the process? So those family members have to go through a rigorous background check process. So it's not like, hey, he's my dad, so have him come over. No, they have to do a background process. They actually do applications. They do all these different things. It's not this quick, easy, get him in. Like people think that like you just, hey, he's my dad, come on over. No, he's my mom. No, he's my mom. No, you got to go through a background check to go through here. Also, the country caps thing factor into this. Country caps, as I said before in the last video, prevent countries from sending a certain population over, or a certain percentage of the population over. Basically, 7% is the max. That at the end of the year, the amount of immigrants that you can send over per country can only be 7% compared to every other country that could send immigrants over. And here's what this does. Because you have countries like China that have 1.4 billion people, or India, 1.3 billion people. Or you have Mexico, which is 127 million people. Since they share a border, they're more likely to send immigrants over. They can only send 7%, just like all three of them can only send 7% apiece, just like countries like Guam, which has 172,000, I think. So when you have that kind of discrepancy in numbers, you're going to have backlogs. When I say backlogs, depending on what country you're coming from, you actually have to wait longer because it's a backlog. There's a lot of people that are still processing. For instance, if you're trying to come over from China, they're still doing applications from 2006. If you're trying to come over from India, they're still doing applications from 2004. If you're coming from Mexico, they're still doing applications from 1997, 1998, 1999. So over 20 years ago, they're still doing this because of the backlog, because of that 7% country cap thing they're doing. Yeah, I know. And just keep in mind, families are the biggest portion of immigrants coming over, staying on green cards, that type of thing. Matter of fact, 2/3 of all green card holders come from family sponsors. So the majority of the 4 categories of people coming over is through family sponsorship. So that's number 1. Let's get into number 2. The way to gain access to the country legally is through a work visa. And this is family's the number 1. Family's the first, that's the highest number of people coming over here is from family. Work visa is number 2. And there's work visas for all different types of categories. There's R1 for religious. There's P1A for athletes. There's one for farmers. It's like H2A, I think. And there's also one for likability in the arts. So like your actors and stuff like that. That's going to be a O1 visa. Now these visas are temporary. Okay, they're not permanent, and your employer has to basically vouch for you. So your employer better like you, because otherwise you're going back to your country of origin. So these visas are going to be used as a temporary way of staying here, and you have to continually renew them. So in order to renew them on a work visa, you actually have to go back to your country of origin and then go there to actually renew the process to come back. Now, the number 1 reason why we have undocumented immigrants, or let's say illegal immigrants, people coming here illegally or staying here illegally, is going to be because of they overstay their visas. That's actually the number 1 reason why we have people here that are undocumented, is because they overstay their work visas. In other words, they don't get them renewed and they just stay here. There you go. So work visas, it's the number 2 reason why people are here, or how they get here legally. And it is also the number 1 reason why we have undocumented immigrants, is because we have people that stay on a work visa that they just overstay. All right, we're going to get number 3. Lottery. This is like the people that have just darn good luck. I mean, it's not like a lottery where they put your name in a bowl and they fish it out or anything like that. It's a lottery that you apply for. You have certain requirements when you apply for this. You have to do background checks and all sorts of stuff on the people that do this. 22 million people, 22 million in 2017 applied for a visa lottery from different countries, and only 50,000 were allowed in. So I want you to keep that in mind. 22 million people apply, 50,000 are allowed in. The percentage of you winning is pretty darn low. And again, they follow the same type of things. You have to do background checks. You have to meet the country caps. All these different things factor into the lottery system. It's not just random people showing up. It's people that are vetted, and it's also the country caps limit to how many people can come from each country. Typically, the lottery system is based on countries that typically don't have a lot of people that come here anyway. So it may be somebody from Guam or some of these other countries that don't have a lot of population or a lot of people coming over as immigrants. But the chances of coming over, again, 22 million apply. In 2017, 50,000 got it. So not a lot of people. And those numbers are actually getting drastically more skewed. All right, let's get to the last one. It's like one of the smallest categories, depending. I mean, last one I just said 50,000 got in per year. So this one probably would be the 3rd biggest category, depending on the year. Right now, it's not. And I'll show you why in just a minute. And that's the bad luck category. It's the people that live in countries that are just war-torn or poverty-stricken. These are refugees that are seeking asylum in our country for a variety of different reasons. Mostly their country of origin is just not treating them very well. So the humane thing to do as Americans, we're trying to allow people to come in from a legal method to get away from these war-torn or just horrible countries. So there are caps, and these caps prevent a great deal of immigrants coming from war-torn countries or just countries that are not doing too great. So in 2017, the cap was 110,000 people. The one for 2018 was like 45,000 people that could come in through asylum. In 2019, 30,000. So you're going to see the numbers keep the cap to the number of people that we're going to allow to come in from these war-torn areas has gone down, down, and down. That's why I kind of placed it as the fourth category, because at this point is one of the lowest groups of people that are coming in as immigrants from seeking refugee or asylum status. So that's the fourth category. How to legally migrate. I am going to break this down into 10 steps. And there's a few little miniature steps in between. And the deal too with these steps, it takes a lot of time to legally migrate over and to become a citizen. So first, there's a check of eligibility for U.S. citizenship. Think about everything I talked about before. Think about the country caps. Think about all that different categories of getting over here. That's the first thing, is to establish that. Then the person has to complete a form called like the N-400 form, and this has information about that particular person. Some of that information deals with legal information and financial information, stuff like that. Then they have to obtain 2 color photographs themselves, identification cards that they can use to run through the system. Then they have to photocopy the documents that they will end up getting from or filling out, and then send those in. Then they have to send in a application package. I know it seems like the same stuff. It's not. Some of it's repeated, but a lot of it's just new stuff. They're constantly sending in more and more paperwork. And then they get fingerprinted. This, again, there are rigorous background checks for anyone that's going through this process to make sure that whatever country that they're coming from, that they're getting information, whether they have any kind of legal issues that are pertaining to that country. Then they attend naturalization interview. So like by step 7, they're finally actually seeing somebody face to face and having an interview. Think of like a job interview, but in this case, the interview is to try to actually gain access and to live in the United States of America. And then they have to, step 8, take an English and civics test. And if we have time, I'm going to give you a glimpse of what their civics test looks like. It is brutal, and I love it. I wish we could actually give that as the test for our civics test in high school, and then you have to pass it, because it requires you to know a lot about our country. And it's a little frustrating that we're expecting that people that don't live here or never lived or weren't born here to know more about our country than the people that do live here. And I'm like, no, we should all know all that information. But that's just me. Then what happens after you take the test, both the English test and the civics test, is they wait. Basically, at this point, the decision needs to be made at the federal level of should this person gain access and stay here. And then if the answer is no, no bueno, you're not here. And if the answer is yes, good. You do the last step, which you actually go into and formalize things, you sign some last paperwork, and you take the oath as a citizen of the United States. And you are now a citizen of the United States. And 10 not so easy steps, but 10 steps-ish. Yay! Term amnesty. Amnesty simply means granting citizenship to an undocumented immigrant flat out. And it's not really flat out. It's just granting citizenship to an undocumented immigrant. Ronald Reagan actually granted amnesty to undocumented immigrants through the Simpson, I think it's like the Simpson-Mazzoli Act. I mispronounce things all the time. So this granted amnesty to a bunch of immigrants who were here illegally. They were undocumented, but here's what happens next. He passes the Immigration and Control Act, and here's how this works. The amnesty is going to be given to undocumented immigrants on two conditions. They register, which they did. They had like a time limit. They had like, you have to register by this time, otherwise you're considered an undocumented immigrant and you could be deported. So it actually encouraged a bunch of undocumented immigrants to register, and 2, they had to pay back taxes. Now, there is a misconception that undocumented immigrants don't pay taxes. They do. They pay sales taxes and a whole bunch of other taxes. They don't pay state and federal taxes as far as income tax goes, because they're not registered within the government, and that actually goes back to the employers employing them and not actually paying them registered with the government. It doesn't matter. So it does 2 things. One, it takes the undocumented immigrants and it gives them a chance to become a citizen, or at least do the pathway to citizenship on two courts. One, you register, which is good for the United States because we can actually document who these people are. And two, you pay your back federal and income taxes, federal and state income taxes, which you couldn't do if you were undocumented.